Thank you for joining us for our webinar today, How to Get Twice the Storage Density at 70% Less Cost with Seagate and Cloudian. Joining us today are Eric Salo, Senior Director, Enterprise Business Development at Seagate, and John Tour, CMO at Cloudian. Welcome, Eric and John. With that, I'll hand it over to John.
Thank you very much, Laura, and thank you, Eric, for joining us today. I think we've got a really exciting topic talking about private cloud and this exciting new system from Cloudian and Seagate that really addresses the needs of the private cloud in a really new, different, and exciting way. So to kick it off, I thought what would be really helpful to start would just be to talk a little bit about the private cloud and why is a private cloud different? What is different from private cloud storage versus traditional enterprise storage? And I was out looking around on the web, and actually the National Institute of Standards has a pretty good definition of private cloud. I think it really works well to frame this conversation. And the 5 attributes that they name for the private cloud, I think, really identify some ways it's different. And the first is it's on demand, right? A private cloud is like a public cloud, except that you are running it in your own infrastructure. It may be on your own premises, or it may be in a colo. But either way, it's you control it. But still, it's got to have the attributes similar to a public cloud. And one of those is, of course, it's got to be on demand. It's got to be available whenever you need it. It's also got to be accessible to whoever needs it, and that includes not only different kinds of devices, different kinds of data types. It also includes different locations. So you may have different locations within your business, different security requirements in those locations, and the ability for people to access that data where they need it. The third is a pooled resource, and this is really key to the whole idea here and really what this product is all about. Is a pooled resource means you've got a single namespace, a single set of assets, a single thing to manage, but it can be shared by everybody that's using this asset, using this data. And what's really important about that is, A, it minimizes management cost, because by pooling the resource, you're keeping that single entity to manage as opposed to having a bunch of different things to manage, so it keeps management costs down. It also keeps the the capital costs down, because you're able to use that resource efficiently. If you only have one storage resource per group, that one resource may be used 20% efficient, it may be used 80% efficient, you don't really know. But when you have a pooled resource, you can add on to that pool as needed and keep that efficiency high. And the fourth point really plays into that also, elastic. If you're going to have that resource be pooled and you're going to maintain a high level of, so it's no good if you have to put in 5 years of capacity in advance. That's going to be inherently inefficient to manage. It's not elastic. Much better if you can start off with what you're going to need in the first, say 6 months or 1 year, and then add to that periodically as your requirements grow. So elasticity is a really key part of this. And then the fifth is a metered service. So if you're going to have a shared resource, inevitably that's going to be used by people in different cost centers. So if you're setting up a resource within IT that might be used by marketing, might be used by sales, be used by finance, you're going to want to allocate costs to those different groups. And of course you want to do it fairly. So you're going to want to be able to meter how that resource is used. So I think all 5 of these things really kind of get at the basics of what a private cloud is about. And I actually added on a 6th myself, which I think is also really important to this whole conversation today. And that is that a private cloud really needs to be public cloud compatible. And by that I mean it has to be able to manage data in a single namespace, whether that data is actually residing within your private cloud or in the public cloud. So in other words, if I've got a private cloud in my colo or in my own data center, I may want to use the public cloud for, say, DR. I want to make a replica of my data going out to the public cloud for disaster recovery purposes. But I want to be able to see all that data in a single view. Or I may want to use the public cloud for capacity overflow. Again, I'd want to be able to see all that in a single view. So this idea of being public cloud compatible means that you're hybrid cloud and multi-cloud ready. And I think those are really key things. Is that this whole concept, the idea of private cloud, is really catching on. In fact, is the hottest area of IT today. And Eric, you want to comment on what you guys are seeing from the Seagate perspective in terms of growth here?
Oh, thanks, John. At Seagate, we make nearly half the world's storage, and a big part of my job is to look at what's changing and to make sure that the company is in a good position to meet the needs of our customers in these new areas. And just look at this graph. It's just amazing how quickly the clouds are growing, right? If you look at traditional IT, which is where I spent most of my career, it's kind of flat to down a couple of points. All-flash arrays being a bright spot, a lot of growth in all-flash arrays, but the real hero as far as byte growth are these clouds, and they're growing at triple-digit or double-digit CAGRs, 30 to 37 points. Private clouds are actually growing faster than public clouds, which is not intuitive to a lot of people. But what we're seeing is that there's all these companies that initially went to the public cloud, and now they're going to stay in some part in the public cloud, but they're bringing some of that data back into the private cloud, and it's driving just a tremendous amount of spend, more than $100 billion in the last couple of years, 2019 to 2022, more than $100 billion in new hardware, more than $100 billion in software and services. It's just amazing what's happening, and so as more and more companies buy these private clouds, then they're saying, how do I get the economies of scale that the public clouds have been taking care of or taking advantage of over the years. And that's really what brings us here today, is that density is the way to get these great economies of scale. And we've worked with Cloudian to create really dense solution that meets the needs of the private cloud, and you can see all the growth.
Yeah, exactly. And I think what really highlights where that growth is coming from is that this is becoming not just an add-on to the IT infrastructure. It's inserting itself as something that's actually taking part of the growth of the public cloud and moving it to this new environment. So what we're seeing is in some cases people are moving apps that were designed for the public cloud, they're moving those apps into a private cloud environment. In fact, 85% of IT users report moving some apps in the previous 12 months from the public cloud to the private cloud. Now, this certainly isn't saying the public cloud is not growing. It obviously is. But what it's saying is that private cloud is becoming an increasingly strong choice. If you have to choose where an application is going to go, public or private, everything is moving to one of these clouds. I think that's what you saw on the previous chart. Everything is moving to either public or private cloud. But the answer is now this is a strong choice. You can take it to either one and get the benefits. And in fact, the benefits of private cloud are really driving that repatriation. So if you look at security, the fact that you've got this thing sitting behind your own firewall within your own security controls. Performance, the data is local, so it's sitting in your data center. The latency of going to the cloud is eliminated. And in fact, you have control over the performance because it's your asset. So that's one thing we've heard from folks is that even if I get good performance on one day in the public cloud, I'm not guaranteed I'm going to get that same performance some other day. So I need that predictability. Cost. This is often a surprise to folks, is that a public cloud can actually cost significantly more than private cloud because, of course, they are buying the same assets. They're buying the same types of infrastructure. They're having to manage the same types of storage software, but they're making a profit on that. So that cost is being passed on to you, and you can save that cost by doing it in your own data center and utilizing that asset efficiently. And then finally, of course, it's under your own control. So as this repatriation happens, what we're seeing is that repatriation from the public cloud is going into private cloud. In fact, there's one very well-known web conferencing service that was built in a cloud environment and is now moving all of their data to a private cloud environment for exactly these reasons. It really suits their operational demands to make that move. So I think what is really exciting about this new product is it fulfills all those needs for the scale, for the shareability, for the flexible elasticity, the flexible growth. And that's what the new product really satisfies, and that's the Cloudian HyperStore Extreme, powered by Seagate. So what this is Cloudian software, Cloudian HyperStore software, which is our scale-out storage system, built on a 100% Seagate hardware platform. So Seagate provides, the chassis, does the controllers, does the drives. It's end-to-end Seagate. And we'll talk a little bit later on about why that is so important. But the end result is substantially greater density, scalability to an exabyte or beyond, and finally, 80% cost savings versus storage as a service. So it's truly built for the private cloud and designed in a way that makes it very easy to realize all those benefits we just talked about. So, within the system, Cloudian and Seagate really enable the private cloud environment in 5 key ways. One is, multi-tenancy. This is a shared environment, so not only can it be shared in a single namespace across multiple locations, but each of those namespaces can be assigned quality of service controls, a separate billing arrangement, so each of them really operates like a separate domain. Secondly, it's geo-distributed. This can be spread across multiple sites and have everything appear as a single namespace. So you could have, storage sitting in Chicago, storage sitting in Los Angeles, and in New York, have them all appear in the same namespace, yet have local storage available to users in all of those locations. Of course, it's a scale-out architecture, which means that as capacity requirements grow, you simply add on devices, or nodes as we call them, and those get folded in to the overall storage infrastructure, and that means that you have that elasticity of growth. And of course, it's public cloud compatible. It works with all 3 major public clouds, AWS, GCP, and Microsoft Azure, and allows you to not only replicate data into those environments, but also tier, so if you can use it for capacity expansion, or you can use it for DR. And this is all managed within the same HyperStore software, so there's no middleware that you have to buy or manage separately. There's no additional licensing required to do that. And then, of course, it's built on, the most efficient storage platform in the industry, and that's really what this new announcement is talking about, why that new storage platform is so different and ideal for this in this environment. So I'll let Eric take the glory in talking about that a little bit.
Thanks, John. Well, everybody's storing more and more data, and of course the key to doing that cost effectively is density. And so our disk drive engineers and our systems engineers work together to make an enclosure that treats the disks really well, but it's also super dense. And I've been in this industry a long time, and I just can't believe the densities that we're hitting as an industry. This is a 4U shelf, and we're putting more than 1.5 petabytes of data into that 1.2 meter long product. So I mean, it's just an incredible amount of storage. And in this one box, it's all self-contained, right? And I'll show you in the next slide a little bit more details. But you've essentially got a big area of hard disks, right? We've got 96 hard disks, and then 2 full servers on the right side. And this gets you a petabyte and a half in a 4U rack. We're also announcing with Cloudian 16 terabyte drives, so they're going to be the first ones to ship 16s. And we're actually, those are available in September. We're actually shipping the first units out this month. And we're just super excited about what we're able to do with this highly dense solution. If you go to the next slide, I'll give you a little more detail.
It's coming.
So there we go. Oh, no, I think we both went forward. Hold on, I'm going to go back. There we go. So if you look at it, just to talk a little bit about how the system is designed. So again, there's 96 drives, and this is fully an enterprise box. So everything's hot swappable. The expanders are hot swappable, and you've got a path to all the drives from either controller. We've got 4 2.5-inch flash drives right there on the front, and then on the right side here, I don't think you guys can see my mouse, but on the right side, there are 2 dual CPU servers, right? So we've got Intel Xeon servers in this thing, and then of course redundant power supplies and fans. So in one box, you've got a petabyte and a half of storage with full amount of compute capability, and this is how we're able to bring the big value, right? Because we're putting essentially more storage per dollar into the system, more storage per rack unit, more storage per floor space, and when you add all that up, it gets you a really good value.
Yeah, and I think what really is exciting about that is that it adds up to value in very tangible ways that drive data center economics. We all know the saying that time is money. Well, I think in the data center, space is money, and the reality is that space is always something which is in limited supply. As data centers get, this is the end of that road. I mean, you don't. It's very hard to get more space, and the reality is that capacity is expanding. Capacity requirements are expanding at over 50% per year. Data center space certainly is not. So, the ability to save space is critical to operations and meeting that expanding demand. So, if you look at how this system helps. Here's just a really simple example. So just take 3 petabytes of raw capacity. In this system, that fits into 8U of rack height. If you look at a comparable system from a traditional IT vendor, that same capacity fits in 32U of rack height in today's system offerings. So that includes drive shelves plus a controller. That represents a 75% space savings, which is just a phenomenal amount of resource, both in terms of just chewing up space that is very hard to get more of, but also if you're going into a colo and paying for space by the rack inch, it's money, right? Because you're paying for that space by the amount you're consuming, and the more you consume, the more you pay. If you can save $1,200 a month just by using less space, over the life of the system, that's $70,000, $80,000. So it's very, very real savings. And I think if you look at the system overall and look at the economics of doing this versus traditional methods, you see that same kind of theme repeated everywhere. In terms of CapEx, it's 70% savings up front versus traditional IT. In terms of space, we just talked about that, 86% more space efficient. In terms of management cost, you're managing an exabyte, up to an exabyte of data in a single namespace in a single cluster that is managed as one unit. That itself is a tremendous savings in terms of management workload. And then finally, scaling cost. This is a really subtle part of the whole thing, but very important as your environment grows. And that is that this system actually gets less expensive as you grow versus a traditional storage system, which gets more expensive as you grow. And people say, well, why is that? What's the difference here? And the difference is really twofold. One is that with the traditional system, as you're adding on drive shelves, you're adding on older technology, which is not taking advantage of the latest economies. So you're adding on stuff which actually costs you more over time, as opposed to in this system, you're adding on new nodes at today's market price, at whatever the future market price is. So costs come down. As you add nodes, you're going to be able to take advantage of that cost reduction, and the average cost of storage for your system comes down. The second thing is that with traditional IT, as you add those systems, you're also adding management bandwidth. You're also adding management workload, and that's going to drive costs up. With this, your management workload stays the same. Data, as you add more to your environment, that data protection efficiency grows. So your capacity efficiency grows. So you're actually getting more efficiency over time as opposed to traditional IT where you're getting less. So you're cutting costs, you're getting more efficient. It's just an amazing switch from the way you think about traditional IT infrastructure. And I think what's really exciting about this story is why does that cost come down over time? Well, I think one part of that is that we're all familiar with just storage costs just declining, but there's another more subtle part of the story that has to do with Seagate engineering that I'll let Eric go into that part of it.
Well, one of the things to think about is that, it's not just about the density you achieve. It's also that time is money. And the faster we can get these new big drives into the market, the quicker you'll save money, right? And so you think about it, we'll design a drive, and it takes sometimes several quarters for that drive to get out to the market because, the vendor's got to design a new chassis, and they've got to test it. They've got to make sure that all their compatibility works. And one of the things we really like about Cloudian is they're quick. And we've worked with them to actually design our system and have them qualify it together, like right during bring up, so that they can give you these big densities and the biggest drives faster. And ultimately, what that results in is that you have a better value. So we're as much as 6 months faster to market with 16 terabyte drives with Cloudian than we are with some of our other customers, just because they're so aggressive in getting the newest technology out there fast.
Yeah, exactly, and that's the thing. By working together, we can get the newer technology to market sooner, and what that translates into for the customer is just ongoing savings. And it's not savings just on the first day you buy the system. It's savings every time you expand the system as well, and that's really the key. Is that you can continue to get that benefit of faster time to market over time. So if you look at this system. Compare it with, say, public cloud, the math is really, really simple. We're looking at a cost of a street price of 160,000 per petabyte with this kind of system versus, the public cloud over time. Of course, you're going to be using that capacity per petabyte year after year after year. So if you add it up over a 5-year period, a 10 petabyte environment would cost you nearly $16 million in public cloud. That's something you can do that math yourself online very easily. This system, over that same period of time, actually achieves an 85% savings. So cuts the cost down to $1.9 million, including management cost, including the colo cost, including power. All the big numbers accounted for here, and that includes support. The cost savings are fantastic. So if you have a lot of data that needs a home, you can really realize some ongoing savings over time in this environment. And furthermore, we know that those savings are going to persist as this environment grows and as you expand on it. We know it's going to continue to get more efficient. And I think a big part of that is the technology that's going into it, and of course the hard drive itself, which is the underlying storage mechanism, is really that piece. So, Eric, talk a little bit about what's going on there.
One of the things we're excited about working with Cloudian is that we're doing the first out for 16s, but we're going to keep going, right? So we've got a long-term partnership with Cloudian where we're going to actually bring our new products out as quickly as possible with them for multiple generations, right? So today you're seeing the 16s, but as we come up with new products, including our hammer drives, which if you guys don't know about them, they're super cool. They actually use a laser to heat the media prior to magnetizing it, and that's going to allow us to get to just crazy densities in hard drives. And so the drives are evolving all the time, and ultimately, like I said in the last slide, speed is money, time is money in the market, and we're working with Cloudian to bring the newest, biggest, fastest drives and largest drives in the technology to market as quickly as we can with them.
Yeah, exactly, and this really translates into savings that are going to continue not only in terms of the capital cost, but in terms of the density as well, because we will continue to drive the density of the overall solution to take full advantage of this amazing technology and make sure that we're getting the greatest possible benefit from it. So I think we've highlighted a few really important points of the overall environment here. One is that this is the most cost-effective enterprise storage. This is a cloud-compatible system. It uses the S3 API for full cloud compatibility. So its enterprise storage is highly cost-effective. It really redefines economics of super capacity storage, because not only does it achieve the industry's highest density and the industry's lowest cost, but also really presents a compelling cost value proposition versus storage as a service. And furthermore, these savings are not something you would achieve only on day one, but in fact will continue to grow over time. As you expand the system, it actually becomes more cost effective, meaning that these savings you're achieving today are sustainable over time. So really, for these three reasons, cost effective, redefines economics, and sustainable, if you've got a lot of data to store, this is something you absolutely have to take a look at and do the math. See how it works in your environment. I think you'll find that the numbers are exceptionally compelling. So with that, I think we have a few questions, and Laura's going to talk us through those.
Yes, excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, John. And thanks for our audience today for joining us to learn about this very exciting new solution from Cloudian and Seagate. Just a reminder, because we do have time for questions, go ahead and enter any into the screen below if you think of any questions right now. There are some that we have, so we'll start with those. The first one says, you mentioned the S3 API. What is it and why does it matter?
Yeah, so the S3 API is we didn't talk a lot about what kind of the technology underlying this, but cloud compatibility is a very key part of the overall equation. As I mentioned, that part, the ability to integrate with the public cloud, and the S3 API is the de facto language of the cloud when it comes to storage. So you can think of NFS and SMB are kind of the language of file storage in your Windows device or your Linux device. Well, S3 is the language of storage in the cloud. And so if you want to be fully cloud compatible, you need to be using the S3 API, because if you have that running in your data center, then you have built-in compatibility with the cloud. So the fact that that's become the de facto standard of the cloud makes it a really logical choice for building a private cloud as well. And Cloudian was built entirely on the S3 API. So this system was designed from the start to employ S3. It was built entirely on that platform, which means we have the highest level of compatibility of any supplier in the space. We also offer a connector for those that have SMB and NFS files that they would like to run in the system. We have a connector that allows you to bring those files into this environment, but the underlying storage infrastructure is still S3, because that is the language that you're going to find in any of the public cloud environments as well.
Yeah, I'll second that. It's clear to me that there's really no second choice, right? It's like, the S3's taken over, and it didn't start out as the formal standard, but it really has become the standard, and everything's going to talk S3 as we go forward.
Great. Okay, another question is, isn't Flash going to take over enterprise storage?
That's a great question. I think a lot about that, right? At Seagate, we think a lot about the dynamics between flash and disk, and there's some really interesting things going on. As I mentioned early in the presentation, the two areas where we see big growth are these clouds, which are overwhelmingly disk-based. The capacity is disk-based all over, and then all-flash arrays, which are really performance. And the interesting dynamic that I see is that storage, right? There's several tiers, sometimes as many as 5 or 6 tiers of performance. I really see it going to 2 tiers. There's going to be a fast flash tier, and it's going to be NVMe, by the way, in the future. And then there's a value disk tier. And every way we look at it, the bytes, like the huge number of bytes and all these big data sets that we're storing, both big data and data that's big, if you think of it that way, that's going to be on disk for a long time, just because the value economics are so compelling. So we really see this duality where quick flash arrays are on flash, and or quick arrays are on flash, and the big stores, the big campaign stores and data lakes are on disks.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what we see as well. And I think I'll just mention that this is a little bit of a hybrid system, in that there is flash in the system we use for storing the metadata, because that is the part that you'll be searching on. So when this system is entirely searchable, you can search it actually using a tool sort of like a Google search. It's Elasticsearch. And when you're searching the system, you're of course searching the metadata. Just like Google searches the internet using metadata, you can search this environment using metadata as well. And all of that metadata is stored on flash. So we have a little bit of data on flash and a lot of data on spinning disk for that cost effectiveness and the density, as Eric mentioned.
Great. Okay, next question. Does my team need specific skills to run this system?
Yeah, that's always a really, really important point is, can my team manage it? Is this something I can bring into my data center and run myself, with confidence that, we're gonna manage it effectively? And the answer is absolutely. The whole point of this system is I think of it kind of as the democratization of the public cloud. We're taking public cloud type technologies and bringing them into the private cloud, bringing them into your data center. And of course, a piece of that is that you have to have ease of use. You have to have simple screens that provide you with a graphical representation of what's going on and the ability to manage those assets in a glance. You also have to have the ability to manage things efficiently, so everything is scriptable. Not only does it have a UI that's graphical, but also everything underneath is scriptable. Everything you can do through the UI, you can also do through scripts, so all tasks can be automated. So you get the ease of use, you get the the ability to automate using those underlying tools, and then of course it's built on a platform which is industry standard hardware. So everything underneath that software layer is hardware technology that you're already familiar with. So it's using standard process. It's using Intel Xeon Silver processors built on standard controller cores. It's also using standard networking. So the back end is 10 gig, 25 gig, 40 gig Ethernet connecting the boxes together. So the underlying hardware are both designed to be used in standard data centers, but you get the benefit that it's bringing technologies of the public cloud along with it. So you really get a next generation technology platform in a very easy to use package.
Great. You can also learn more, of course, at Cloudian.com. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to us directly at info@Cloudian.com. We'll be happy to address those. And of course, you can also check out Seagate.com. Thanks for joining us.